You're not going to find a person. You're going to find a presence, an awareness that is aware of this moment. And surprise, surprise, that's you. It's more intimate than your breath, more intimate than your heartbeat. And it's something that doesn't ever change. Life changes all the time. The body, mind changes all the time. But you, as this awareness, you don't change.
Welcome to Letting Go and the Greatest Secret, where we explore the end of your suffering and the beginning of lasting happiness. I'm Hale Dwoskin, and today we'll be talking for the second time on this podcast with Shakti Caterina Maggi. Shakti Caterina Maggi is a living embodiment of truth who can help you discover who you are, bring it down to earth, live it, and embody it fully. If you were going to give someone just a brief introduction to how you share the truth of who you are with people who come to you for the first time, what would that be? What would be just a short way of describing what this is all about?
Well, first thing that come up for me to say is that we are all seekers, even when we don't know it. Some of us are consciously seeking, and so maybe that's why you are watching this video now. And some of us are seeking, but they don't know it. And we are seeking in experiences like material experiences, work, career, or relationships. But we're looking for something that is felt as tremendously important and seems to be lost. And at a certain point, we go deeper in our inquiry, and that inquiry becomes to be more conscious. And we know that we are missing something connected to our true essence. And so what I do with people, I guide them to recognize what they really are and discover that they're not what they thought to be. They're not a separate entity. They're not a person inside the body mind, separated from the rest of the universe, but they're actually one consciousness living through many forms. And also what I share generally with people is not just this, but also how to bring this recognition in their everyday life, how to embody it fully, how to make it become a stable way to live, in this world, to manifest their individuality in a clear way and dissolving those conditionings, those ego protections mask that often shield our essence and don't allow the light from within to shine and to be experienced as an authentic way. So we all feel, I think, two things as a seeker. The first one is that we want to know, what we are, what is this all about? And the second thing is that after this transcendental question, because we are this oneness that is living through the many, has been answered, is how can I make this oneness into the form? How can I embody it in an authentic way? How can my individuality be a blossoming of awareness? So discovering what we are and bring it down to earth, to live it, to embody it fully. That's what is the essence of my teaching.
That's beautiful. I think when we engage at discovering that for ourselves, it just really opens things up. It really does. So how would you invite people into that process? In other words, you talked a little bit about your teaching, but how would you invite people into this self-discovery? What's something that we could all do or explore directly that would invite us into that?
Well, right now, as you listen in this conversation, you're watching a woman talking on a screen. You could look back at the one that is aware of this experience, the sound, the color, the shape of what you're watching, the physical sensation of the body may be impacted by what has been said. Now look back at the one that is aware of this experience. What do you find? You're not going to find a person. You're going to find a presence, an awareness that is aware of this moment. And surprise, surprise, that's you. It's more intimate than your breath, more intimate than your heartbeat. And it's something that doesn't ever change. Life changes all the time. The body, mind changes all the time. But you, as this awareness, you don't change. And once this has been clearly pinpointed, then the entire journey starts of embodying it fully so that your life becomes a representation and a reflection of this understanding. So for me, awakening is just a starting point. It's not at all the end.
Yeah, I'm glad you emphasized that, because a lot of people think I'm awakened, or they think that's what happened. They'll get their awakening, and then life is beautiful, and they can just go. I don't know what they think, but well, actually, isn't it that people have turned self-discovery into an ending as opposed to a beginning, or an object to be gotten as opposed to just a discovery that's part of just a natural unfoldment?
I totally agree with you. And the thing is that for me, awakening is a never ending opening. It's like a window opening on another window, on another window. It's an endless discovery, self discovery, and it's a deepening. So we shouldn't look at awakening as the final goal. We should look as awakening as a starting point of our true spiritual life. Because you see, as long as we live in the ignorance of what we have all ideas, all sorts of ideas about what awakening is. When I will be awakened, I will never be sad again, or
Right.
I will never be sick, or anything like that. And of course, this is myth, because awakening has nothing to do with the condition of the body, mind, or your moods. It has to do with being free from the fear of being separated from life. So that's what is going away. It's going away the sense of separation. And then a truth process that I would call an alchemical process of transformation starts. That fear that was built up in various ways, in various patterns, starts to burn, starts to be dissolved. And the energy that was creating certain patterns, certain conditionings in our life is reabsorbed back in awareness and is available then to be manifested in a new way. So that's the process of alchemical transformation that happens after awakening. Because mainly, of course, there is some ego structure that are burnt before awakening, but mainly I would say that the measure of conditioning is really erased zero after. Because when you work on yourself before awakening, you still have the idea to be a person that is waking up, or a person that is working on herself or himself. And because of that, the sense of being a person is maintained on some level. Where instead, when awakening has happened, then these conditionings, might be jealousy, might be competition, it might be, I don't know, all sorts of conditioning, sense of inferiority. They might come up as an empty ghost without anymore any center or will. But you don't see these anymore as a threat or something that is happening to you. You see it as a process that is happening in you. And it's a process that can be dissolved in you through being aware of what you are, through meditation. So that's the core of what, I would say that 80% of my job is this, is waking up and then doing your
Yes.
homework.
Yeah, that homework. Well, that's the part many people don't want to do, but it actually can be exquisitely beautiful, even though there are, of course, moments of discomfort through that. Watching the illusions dissolve can be exquisitely beautiful. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And also sometimes a bit terrifying because you
Yes.
see, it's good to mention, because otherwise if we give the impression that it's all like butterflies and roses, people might say, it doesn't sound butterflies and roses here. Maybe I'm on the wrong path. A spiritual crisis is the fuel of our spiritual life. So if we don't go in crisis, you're not a real seeker. You're not here to hide in a corner of emptiness, away from life. No, that's a distorted thought about spiritual life. A true spiritual life is a life for people that are ready to walk on fire, on burning chokes, and to do it in the name of truth. And the result, of course, is bliss and freedom. But you don't do it for the bliss. You do it because you love truth. So it's a path of love. And crisis can happen before awakening, during an awakening, after, spiritual crises are those moments in which, in a way, the divine is putting on the barbecue more
Right,
ourselves. And we get
right.
roasted, but blissfully, in a way.
Yes.
We know that the end result is love and freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you use the barbecue analogy. I just had this image that as we get cooked, what gets dissolved off is the limitation, but what gets revealed is what was always behind it. So it's
Absolutely, absolutely. It's coming into my mind as you speak the image of the vibhuti. The vibhuti is the sacred ashes, and in India is known. There are also siddhas that are able to materialize it from
uh-huh.
thin air. But what is interesting is that vibhuti is the symbol of the burnt ashes of the ego. So that's why it's sacred to Shiva and to emptiness. It's all the symbology of the burnt ego. It's very interesting.
It is interesting. That's
Mm,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, because they use this, there is this analogy in the East of the after. The first time I heard it was actually from Lester, my mentor, but he said that afterwards, all your limitations are like burnt rope. They still may retain the same form, but they have no power over you because they're just ash.
Yeah. And it's interesting because what was poison, you see, the ego, what was the problem, becomes medicine, because the vibhuti is also a medicine. And it has qualities because it can become much bigger or much thinner. It defies the laws of matter. I'm just mentioning it because it's interesting. It's an interesting metaphor, or how we can go beyond our own limitation and use them actually as not something to avoid, but something we can use as a trampoline to go in a higher octave of ourselves. So what was once a difficulty becomes a gift.
Yes, yes. Well
Talent.
said. That beautiful. So, you mentioned Shiva and your name, Shakti, or the name that your teacher gave you, is also a part of the process. Shiva is more inward facing, which is necessary in the beginning. And you don't abandon that, but you bring what you discovered in that inward facing to more of an outward facing look at the world. And you speak beautifully about that. Can you talk a little bit more about how the dance of Shakti is something that we all should be engaged in, and that sacred feminine?
Yeah. Everything that you see in this moment, your computer or your cell phone, the sound that you hear, your own body, the room you're in or the space you're in, that's all the dance of Shakti. There is only her. And it's basically your consciousness manifesting, moving, changing all the time. That's what is Shakti. It's the goddess. When in the tradition, Indian tradition is referred to Shiva, it's the awareness, the void, the emptiness that is aware of this change. So in this moment, you as the witness of this conversation, and you as the manifestation of this conversation, is Shiva Shakti. So we
Yes.
shouldn't look at this concept as something away from us, but we should see that there is only this. There is only Shiva Shakti, actually. And what we believe to be these body minds, that is just a part of ourself, but not absolutely a container of ourself, is also Shiva Shakti. I don't know if it sounds too complicated for
No, no.
people.
Well, it doesn't to me, but we should probably say for people who don't know much about the Indian tradition that this is your living experience right now. It's not something esoteric. It sounds esoteric, but it really isn't. But it's my fault. I brought up Shakti because my sense of the sacred feminine is very deep in my experience, and that everything is that sacred feminine. And if you're listening to this, if you can just be open to that, at least as a possibility, you might find something very beautiful is already manifesting through you as you.
Yeah, you see, in the Western approach, vision, and in Western spirituality, now the divine feminine is a topic that is increasingly popular because it's coming up. We
Yes.
have been dominated by a more male oriented approach. And This means that whatever is life manifestation might have been seen as something to escape from in our spiritual inquiry, where instead life is the Sadguru, is the ultimate guru. It's not something to escape from, it's something to bow to. It's the ultimate teacher that is going to point us what we are and where we are in the process. You know, we can say, I'm awakened, I'm this, I'm that, but then look at your life. Look at your wife or your husband. Look at your family. Look at your colleagues. Is your life an embodiment of what you say to me? If it is, that's because divine Shakti, that is divine feminine, that is life, is representing this. But sometimes, painfully, and I would say in a merciful, merciless way, life is pointing to us where we are not, where we believe to be. You know, in our mind, we are like sitting next to God, you know, and super enlightened and like radiating light everywhere. But you know, in reality, maybe we are, you know, really grumpy, or we have a lot of contractions and hiccups and hypocrisies and compromises. So life, that is, in my opinion, the ultimate guru, the Sadguru, that is all there is the place to see where really we are spiritually. So when we speak about divine feminine, we're speaking about our vulnerable parts, we're speaking about our source, the places where we feel wounded, the places that maybe we want to hide, and the places out of which we can resource energy, energy that was locked into fear to be transformed back into joy where initially belonged to. So the divine feminine path is this. You see, when we look at transcendence, I would say that transcendence must be the initial part of our journey. No serious spiritual journey can start without transcendence. So coming back to Shiva Shakti, towards Shiva, we can call it Shiva, we can call it awareness, we can call it the unmanifest, we can call it our divine essence, presence, silence, is the same. But then we have to come back to earth and we need to bring heaven on earth, no?
Right.
And to do that, that's the divine, you know, the feminine, divine feminine, the embodiment process is necessary. Otherwise, and I'm sure you have been many people like that, you end up to be a bit disconnected from life. You live in this like kind of witnessing position, but then, you know, you're very carefully keeping life out there, slightly away from you,
Right,
you know,
right, right.
and it doesn't hurt you. And maybe you speak of yourself in third person because it's more impersonal, or you say like, this form doesn't feel like doing that, you know, things like that. These are all signs that, you know, you're not at ease with your incarnation. And instead, incarnation is the reason why you're here. You are already a spiritual being and you're manifesting on this dimension, not because it's a trick to come back to emptiness, but because you came here to experience it and to bring some understanding in it. So the process of embodiment is absolutely important. Otherwise, why at all awareness, emptiness, God, divine presence manifested all this just to come back to itself? No, to experience itself in manifestation and continuously coming back to itself and experiencing itself even more glorious way. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. Although I have to say, I got this image. It's again, I don't know why we're taking a much more Eastern direction with this conversation, but I'm enjoying it, and I hope you all are too. But there's this image in India where with Shakti on Shiva's shoulders, and Shakti has his eyes closed. He's seeing the world through Shakti. And what you were saying, I think, is an embodiment of that. So, how do we cooperate with that? How do, again, if there our old tendencies may still be coming up, and that's part of the process, how do we really cooperate with this natural unfoldment?
Well, as forms, we are already part of manifestation. So, as forms, we don't cooperate. As forms, we are lived by life. For instance, can you produce your own thoughts? No.
No.
Can you produce your own emotions? No. Otherwise, you would only have happy thoughts and
Yes, yes.
nice emotions. So, as form, you are lived by her, by Shakti, by life, continuously, by the divine feminine, all the time. But as what you really are, is awareness, you can become more conscious of yourself. And working on your ignorance, you're going to see how this ignorance is going to be less and less represented in your life. Let's make a step back. So my talk is going to be hopefully be more clear. We might be aware of this or not, but life is a dream, is a dream of consciousness. So in itself is not real. It's a manifestation of something that we could call absolute reality awareness. The way in which manifestations is unfolding is a perfect reflection of the level of consciousness we are in. If we are ignorant about what we are, the manifestation is going to reflect the ignorance. If we know what we are, manifestation is going to take the shape of that. So the cooperation that you're speaking about is, I wouldn't call it cooperation, but it's a nice way to phrase it as well. It's basically bringing this understanding into life by being aware of the places where we are not aware of. So by keep on our self-inquiry, by going deeper and deeper in layers of conditioning that might be hidden initially because they were so deep, our level of attention was here and those layers maybe were here. So until you don't reach this level, you don't even see them, you don't work on them. Sometimes I give an example to people that maybe it will become more clear. Sometimes there are situations of your life that remain stuck for years and years and years, decades, and they're the same. And then all of a sudden, you start to see something in you, and then life changes. That situation that was stuck changes, either goes into crisis and you force in a way to look at it, or is changing in some way that is agreeable to you. And that change is because you changed. When I say you changed, I'm not speaking about the person. I'm speaking of you as consciousness. So you as consciousness, you are continuously appearing as life, the dance of Shakti, and you are at the same time remaining always the same, the unmovable, still Shiva nature. Shiva, Shakti, the masculine and feminine, are not two things, they are one. In India, they always say, we shouldn't say even Shakti, we should always say Shiva Shakti or Shakti
Yes.
Shiva, because they're one. I don't know why we're speaking so much about India, but it's coming up anyway in this conversation.
That's the way it is,
And
isn't it?
yet, if you look at ancient depiction of Shiva, sometimes is represented as half male and half female. And
Yes.
that's one of the depiction, actually, if I'm not wrong, of the sixth chakra, the chakra about being aware, seeing. And this is because why it's half female and half male, because it's all one. Form and emptiness are one. Samsara is nirvana, nirvana is samsara. The stillness, the empty dreamer, and the dream are one thing. So if they are one thing, if you as consciousness are more conscious of yourself, then the consciousness changes. And that is mathematical with such a precision that it's almost scary sometimes.
Yes. Yes, where we get confused is we think I'm personally changing my thoughts or my feelings, and the outside world changes. It's not. It's an evolution of the one consciousness evolving through each form, and as it transforms that form, its world view and everything around it transforms with it.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because consciousness dream that is life is always mirroring as a loyal lover where we are. So when we see a life that is full of ignorance and strife and pain, look back inside, not inside the person, but in you as awareness. Become conscious of maybe patterns of repetitions that you have been identifying with. You're going to see them represented in your life. And that is going to be the magnifying glass to see them in you. So the homework that I spoke about in the beginning of our conversation, when we say awakening is just the beginning, is exactly what we're talking about, this going deeper and deeper in the understanding. And it's not personal. It's not about like trying to have nice thoughts so you have a nice life, or trying to have nice feelings so you have a nice life, because that would come from fear. Is a total letting go, as is the title of this interview. It's not trying to do something, is an undoing the conditioning, letting go into divine hands, and see how at that point everything is manifesting in such a way, with such a perfection, with such a precision, that is showing your understanding. Also, before it was perfect and precise, but was showing your ignorance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is beautiful how the external may not change. It's our point of view that changes dramatically.
Yeah, because sometimes, we shouldn't expect like major big changes. Sometimes they do happen, but sometimes, as you say, it's just our point of view that is changed. Our ability to sometimes frame what is happening from a bigger perspective and seeing parts that we were not aware of. Maybe, for instance, just to give an example, we were seeing ourselves as a victim of life or certain situations. And as our view open up and we see better the situation, we realize that we were just playing the other side of the rope, and on the other side was somebody else that was simply a representation of another part of us. And when we see the dynamic collapses back in us and it collapses back in life.
Yeah, it's beautiful. What comes to mind is that this, I don't know how I'm quoting, but all limitation, appearance of limitation, and all these thoughts and limiting feelings and all that dissolves in awareness. As it comes into awareness, it naturally dissolves. I often say it's awareness is naturally the universal solvent. But can you speak to that? How just bringing it into the awareness is what causes the dissolving?
Yeah. Well, whatever we are unconscious of is going to dominate us unconsciously, is going to be something that we are not consciously one with. So, by becoming more aware of internal processes that might be a representation of still ignorance that is present in us, the awareness, becoming conscious of them, is seeing the error and the energy that was the Shakti, the energy that was playing in such a way that was a manifestation of ignorance. He's redirected back to the beloved, to Shiva, to emptiness, and is dissolved back into emptiness. When we are becoming conscious of a problem in our life, of a topic, maybe initially we are going to be seeing it as something happening to us, something that is happening to a person. But through a path of self-inquiry, we might catch the impersonality of it. And that from that bigger perspective, we can see we don't get so caught up by the narrative of the mind that might have been weaving a lot of stories around that problem or that conflict, but we might become aware of the energy of the problem in itself. And that becomes the object of our contemplation, of our meditation, by not moving anymore away from something, by not avoiding anymore that feeling, but by being one with it, by becoming aware means being one with it, then that energy is coming back home. And the conflictual situation that was an aspect of the sense of separation is dissolved back into oneness. This, of course, is a very complex discourse that I cannot summarize in a few minutes, but I hope
No,
entice
actually,
some.
I think you've been doing a great job.
Thank you.
So if we just allow ourselves to just sit back and allow this process to unfold, I guess it looks different for each person, but is there some universal patterns that people see as this is all unfolding?
Yes, as we touch a subtler and subtler level of the universal mind, you see, because our mind is not that talking parrot on our shoulder that is commenting is happening, when it's already happened, like driving, you turn right and you say, you're turning right.
Right.
That's not your true mind. Your true mind, your true intelligence is consciousness. So when you wake up to what you are and you go and you become steady in this recognition, that the parrot dies for lack of attention, because it becomes so redundant, that you don't believe anymore to live inside of that inner dialogue, but you see that you are behind it. So that dies, and you step back in what I would call is your true cosmic divine intelligence, that is this life. That's your intelligence, that's your mind, it's your dream. So when you go deeper and deeper in this understanding, you might start to see archetypical patterns emerging that has nothing to do with a person. They're not personal, but they are the way in which life itself is building up. And I mean, I don't know if this is a too deep topic for this conversation, but it's very interesting when we touch this level of the mind that I would call symbolic,
Yes,
because you really see how it's replicated in nature, is replicated in behaviors of collective behaviors, like humans together tend to represent that. It's very, very interesting. It's where sacred geometry is based on, and a lot of Asian teachings. So because they were, I think Asian people, they were not so egotistical as ourselves. We are much more an individual oriented society than our ancestors. Even like 200 or 300 years ago, individualism was not so strong.
that's
And
true.
so more you go back in time, and more you find more a we consciousness model, and you see for them were evidence these patterns. For us, we're so self-obsessed, with our telephone, that we don't see this stuff. But when we do, it's mind blowing. It's very, very beautiful. It's really a geometrical representation of life on a very subtle level. But not many people see this. So I don't know how relevant it might be for a listener, unless it's a curiosity, maybe. Of course, somebody might recognize this, I'm saying, of course, but not maybe many people.
Yeah, I think you'd be surprised. Again, I find that whatever comes out in these discussions, there's at least a few people, if not many, who this is what they need to hear
Sure.
because they're already experiencing it. When I sit in front of a room, well, actually, it's in Zoom meetings these days, but when I sit in front of a room, I'm always amazed at what needs to come through is nothing like what the mind would think needs to come through. It's coming from a totally different level. And this conversation has gone in my experience, in a very beautiful way. And those of you listening to it, I would recommend you listen to it a couple of times, because I think each time you do, you might start to see some of this in your own experience. And if you don't worry about it. In my experience, we all have this beautifully unique way of expressing light and truth and love and beingness through each individual expression. And that's why this is fun. This because we're not all just doing everything exactly the same way. It would be very boring.
I absolutely never saw one process of awakening identical to the other.
Yes.
And there are endless level of deepening. It's endless. So for some people, much of what I say might say, oh yes, of course. For some others might be new, but for all of them, what is joining us is the awe, the wonder of seeing that we are not what we believe to be. We are not limited beings. We are an unlimited awareness living through time and space and creating time and space as you're conscious of it. So it's pretty mind blowing, even the
Yes, it
basic.
is mind blowing. It is mind blowing, but that's the whole idea. We don't need to feed the parrot anymore.
No,
And
absolutely.
when we open to this perspective, it helps us free ourselves from believing we're just that parrot.
Yeah. Well, sometimes certain people approach meditation thinking, oh, please, can you shut up on my mind? And what I say to them is, I'm not helping you to shut up your mind. I'm helping you to see that you are not your mind. And then by that, the frigging parrot, as we said, it dies off for starvation, for lack of attention. Because you don't need to stop the mind. You need to recognize where you are, respect the mind. That might be helpful for people, especially if they experience a lot of chaos. There is a beautiful image that is coming into my mind. I don't know anymore if it's a yoga vasista or it's something else. That is the burning of the forest of the ego. And the burning of the forest of ignorance is something that starts with a tiny spark. You never know where it starts. But when it starts, it cannot be stopped. So
Yes.
don't worry if you think, there is still a lot of miles to go. It will happen by itself. Just keep on being open, keep on trusting life that is your good teacher, your good mother, giving you what you need every day, and you will see unfolding in you.
Yes. Yes. Very well put. Thank you. So, is there any suggestion that you would give to the people listening to this of a way they can explore this deeper on their own?
I would say that if you already have come to a level in which you see, at least intellectually, that you are awareness, and maybe every now and then it's your actual experience, look at your life. Look how your life is happening. Look at the areas in which your energy, the energy of your life is stuck or is stagnant, and contemplate within you where maybe you are still trading some joy for security because you are afraid of life itself. And try to be a bit more courageous. You don't need to do anything like mad, and change tomorrow, but be more sincere. Yeah. Try to see if your life can become more authentic. And you're going to be surprised how even little things can move a lot of energy inside and outside of you.
I hope you enjoyed our time with Shakti Caterina Maggi. I love how she said, awakening is an opening on another opening on another opening. Stay open to what opens in you. You can learn more about Shakti Caterina Maggi in the podcast notes from this episode, including her messages, free recordings, and events. Her website is shakticaterinamaggi.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you have immediate access to future episodes. Please give us a 5-star rating and share it with the people you care about. If you'd like to learn more about my work, my mentor Lester Levinson's work, and the Sedona Method, visit www.sedona.com. As you explore our site, you learn the key to lasting happiness, success, peace, and emotional well-being. We have books, courses, events, and plenty of free material to explore. Again, go to sedona.com. That's SEDONA.com. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Letting Go and the Greatest Secret.